Welcome to the Midnight Archives.
I still remember the first moment I saw the base. It was one of those gray, overcast mornings in late October when the wind seemed to carry the chill of forgotten memories across the barren fields. The snow hadn't arrived yet, but the frost had begun to lace the edges of everything, turning the landscape into a fragile, brittle world that felt just a little closer to death. I had traveled hundreds of miles from Moscow, following rumors, whispers of a facility buried beneath the earth near Novgorod, abandoned after the Soviet Union's final experimental projects. They called it the Lost Base. Its name alone carried the weight of countless stories no one had ever confirmed. Driving up the cracked and overgrown service road, the forest opened briefly to reveal a structure swallowed almost entirely by nature. Trees bent over it like guards, their limbs entwined in a strange embrace. The concrete walls were pockmarked, streaked with rust, and nearly camouflaged by moss and creeping ivy. There was no signage, no guards, nothing alive, just the quiet suggestion of a place that had once held purpose, but now existed only as memory and rumor. I parked a few meters away, heart thudding, and grabbed my pack. My camera, recorder, notebooks, all ready. The first steps were cautious. Every footfall on the frost-bitten earth echoed oddly, as if the forest itself listened and responded. The main entrance was a steel door, dented and scratched, with a locking mechanism that had long since rusted solid. I crouched, studying it, and found a smaller maintenance hatch. I pried it open with what little leverage I had. The metal groaned like a living thing, and a gust of stale, cold air rushed out, smelling faintly metallic, almost like blood. It hit my face, made me flinch, and I stepped back, letting the door swing closed behind me for a moment. Inside, the world was different. The temperature dropped sharply, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones before your skin even registers it. My flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating walls covered in years of grime and decay. Water dripped from somewhere above, pooling into shallow puddles that reflected the light, creating eerie double shadows. The smell of iron was stronger here, and beneath it, a faint chemical undertone I couldn't identify. I pressed on, every step calculated, careful to disturb nothing. The first corridor was long and narrow, with pipes running along the ceiling. Some leaked, dripping steadily, forming tiny regular splashes on the metal catwalk. It was quiet, unnaturally quiet. No hum of machinery, no distant echoes of people. It was as though time had stopped here. My recorder captured the faint reverberation of my own movements. Even my breathing seemed amplified. I realized quickly that fear in such silence is a physical weight, pressing against your chest, making every heartbeat loud. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, I reached a junction. The corridor split in 3 directions, each darker than the last. I chose the left path, guided by the faint blue glow emanating from deep within. The source was unclear, flickering intermittently like an old fluorescent bulb struggling against its own failure. As I moved closer, I began to see shapes. Tubes and containers lined the walls, covered in condensation, some cracked or broken. Inside, shadows seemed to stir, just at the edge of vision. My pulse quickened, a nervous thrum that I couldn't silence. I paused, listening. The only sounds were the occasional drip and the subtle hum of something beneath the floor, a vibration so faint I almost questioned if I imagined it. My flashlight caught the edge of a door, slightly ajar. Inside, the room revealed itself, an array of consoles, screens long dead, and scattered papers yellowed with age. On the wall, someone, or something, had written in a shaky hand, "They are watching." The words were smudged, partially erased, but legible enough to send a shiver down my spine. I stepped forward cautiously, boots clanging softly on the metal floor. A sudden noise, like a latch clicking, made me spin around. Nothing. Just shadows, but they seemed to move differently now, shifting, almost sentient. I took out my camera, recording everything, telling myself this was for documentation. But the moment I focused the lens, a brief flicker of light illuminated a figure in the corner. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its silhouette was vague, twisting, almost like smoke shaped itself into a body. I blinked, and it was gone. I swallowed hard and forced myself forward. The corridor bent, spiraling downward. The air grew heavier, colder, thickening with every step. My breath came out in clouds, and I realized that the deeper I went, the more my ears rang, as if the building itself was pressing down on me. Every pipe, every wall seemed alive, resonating in a frequency I could feel but not hear. The blue glow intensified. It was no longer soft. It pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. Then I saw the doors, dozens of them, along the corridor, all identical, each sealed with heavy latches. Behind some, I could make out shadows shifting, shapes moving unnaturally as if they were aware. My rational mind argued, it's the light playing tricks, the reflections, the fatigue. But my instinct screamed otherwise. I realized this place was not just abandoned, it had become something else entirely, something aware of its own emptiness. I reached the end of the corridor, a massive steel door etched with symbols I didn't recognize. Some seemed technical, others ritualistic, almost like warnings. My hand trembled as I touched the surface. The metal was icy, yet pulsing under my fingers, vibrating faintly. I stepped back instinctively. A whisper, so soft I could barely hear it, sounded behind me. "Welcome." I spun, but there was no one, just shadows. My recorder caught nothing, my camera, nothing. Only the echo of my own fear. I forced myself to breathe, trying to calm down. This was the point of no return. Whoever or whatever had been here before me had left traces, but the traces were alive, as if the building itself remembered them. I had to see further. I had to understand. And so, with my flashlight steady, my recorder running, and my heart hammering, I pushed the steel door open. The hinge groaned, and a sudden gust of stale, cold air rushed out, carrying a smell that made my stomach twist. Old metal, chemicals, and something else. Something alive. The room was massive, far larger than I expected, filled with long tables covered in papers, vials, and strange instruments. At first it appeared abandoned, but as I stepped closer, I realized the shadows I'd glimpsed earlier were moving independently, curling along the walls, stretching across the floor, responding to my presence. And then I saw it, a humanoid form suspended in the center, surrounded by faintly glowing wires and tubes, its features indistinct yet horrifyingly familiar, like someone I knew but altered, alien, wrong. Panic surged. My instincts screamed at me to leave. But curiosity, or perhaps obsession, rooted me to the spot. The figure twitched, as if testing my reaction. I raised the camera, zooming in, capturing every detail. And that's when the room seemed to inhale. Every shadow, every pulse of blue light synchronized into a rhythm, almost as if the building itself were alive, assessing me, studying me. I remember thinking, this is not a place for the living, yet I could not leave. Something demanded that I see further, understand, and so I moved forward into the pulsating heart of the lost base. The moment I stepped into the central chamber of the base, a weight pressed down on me, as if the air itself had grown denser, heavier. The faint hum that had accompanied me through the corridors now swelled into a low, vibrating pulse, resonating deep in my chest. The room was immense, far larger than I had imagined, with ceilings that disappeared into shadows. Old machinery lined the walls, consoles with cracked screens, wires coiled like serpents, and tubes that ran along the floor and ceiling, some leaking faintly glowing liquids that hissed softly as they hit the cold metal. The floor was slick, reflecting the blue light that seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. I moved slowly, careful not to disturb anything, but the instinctive sense of being watched made every step feel deliberate, measured. The faint sound of dripping echoed across the chamber, each drop striking the metal floor with an almost musical precision, punctuating the oppressive silence. My flashlight caught glimpses of figures, or what I thought were figures, suspended in the shadows, sometimes at the edge of the glow, sometimes half hidden behind equipment. I convinced myself it was my mind, the tension, the isolation playing tricks, and yet, as I walked further, I saw them more clearly. The humanoid forms were suspended in transparent tubes, their bodies rigid yet distorted, features twisted in ways that seemed deliberate, almost experimental. Tubes and wires connected them to the machinery, feeding them with glowing fluids, keeping them alive, or something like life. Their eyes, when visible, were open but unseeing, blank with an emptiness that gnawed at something primal inside me. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my breathing steady, forcing myself to observe, record, and understand. On one table, I noticed a series of documents, yellowed with age but largely intact. I picked them up, hands trembling, and discovered what looked like logs of experiments, dates, times, measurements. But more disturbing were the annotations, warnings, cryptic phrases, and diagrams depicting the human body twisted in unnatural positions. Some pages were torn, others stained with something dark that had dried and cracked with age. I shivered and replaced the documents carefully, though I wanted to study them more. There was no time. Not yet. Something in this room demanded my attention. The blue glow around me began to intensify, shifting to a pulsating rhythm, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and contract as if the room itself were breathing. A hum joined the pulse, low and vibrating, resonating in my bones. Then, from somewhere deep in the chamber, I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. At first, it seemed distant, too faint to identify, but as I listened, the words became clearer, articulated with deliberate intent. "You've come. We've been waiting." I froze. The hair on my arm stood on end. The whisper repeated, now a chorus, overlapping, coming from every corner, every shadow, every tube that lined the chamber. My rational mind tried to argue, wind in the pipes, echo, fatigue, but it was too precise, too human, and yet wrong. Something in the cadence, the tone, was alien. I turned slowly, flashlight sweeping across the room. One of the tubes trembled violently, its occupant moving for the first time since I arrived. Limbs twisted unnaturally, jerking in ways that should have been impossible. The liquid inside bubbled, glowing brighter, and the form slowly emerged, almost as if testing its newfound freedom. My pulse accelerated. I backed away instinctively, but curiosity anchored me in place. I could not look away. The figure detached from the tube, stepping or floating forward. It was humanoid but grotesque, its limbs too long, fingers tapering into sharp points, skin pale with an unnatural sheen. Its head tilted in ways that should have been anatomically impossible, and when it spoke, it didn't need to move its lips. The words came directly into my mind, resonant, echoing. "You shouldn't be here, but now you are." I stumbled backward, knocking over a console. Sparks erupted, briefly illuminating the room with red and orange flashes. Shadows danced wildly across the walls. More figures began to stir in the other tubes, some breaking free, some remaining suspended yet aware, watching, observing, waiting. The blue light pulsated faster, syncing with my heartbeat. My camera swung wildly in my hands, capturing fragments of movement, fragments of horror that would be impossible to comprehend fully. I ran, or tried to. The floor beneath me seemed to shift subtly, almost like the chamber itself was moving. Corridors I had just passed now appeared to loop, twist, and lead to new spaces I hadn't noticed before. The building wasn't abandoned. It was alive, sentient. Every pulse of light, every tremor, every hiss of escaping gas was an expression of its awareness. It wanted me to see. It wanted me to feel. And I did. The humanoid figure approached me slowly, deliberately, its elongated shadow stretching across the walls like ink. It raised a hand, almost invitational. The whispering chorus escalated into a symphony of voices, overlapping and incoherent, yet understandable in their intent. Witness, learn, become. I realized I was standing in the heart of something beyond comprehension, an experiment not just of science, but of reality itself. I wanted to run, to scream, to escape, but my feet refused to obey. The room pressed against me, shadows brushing my skin, whispers wrapping around my mind, and the pulsing blue light enveloping everything in an otherworldly glow. Every detail I had recorded, the documents, the tubes, the twisted forms, was only part of the truth. The full horror was being experienced now, in the present, overwhelming every sense. Time lost meaning, minutes stretched into eternities. I felt myself changing, absorbing something from the room, some intangible essence. My vision flickered, reality bending, the shadows and forms merging into a singular consciousness that regarded me with infinite patience and malice. I understood, with a terror-laden clarity, that the lost base was not a place of the past. It was a vessel, an entity, and now I was part of its witness, its history, and perhaps its future. As I stumbled toward the exit, I realized that leaving was impossible. Every path twisted back into itself. The blue light pulsed faster, more urgently, and the whispers intensified, each syllable a needle in my mind. And then I understood. I was never meant to leave. I was meant to see, to witness, to become part of the story that would continue long after I was gone, recorded in shadows, in whispers, in the walls that breathed and remembered. And so, I moved deeper, compelled by a mixture of dread and necessity, knowing that every step forward was both my salvation and my damnation. The lost base had awoken, and I was its chosen audience, forever entangled in the rhythm of its pulsing heart, in the glow of its blue light, and in the silent screams of those who had come before.
If you want to uncover more hidden files, subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with the Midnight Archives. You've been watching the Midnight Archives. The next file unlocks soon.